An old and slouched man shuffling across his living room and dumping another TV bin in his trash bin, which is already stacked with them. He puts on his apron before butchering a dead animal when its head accidentally falls to the floor. The old man attempts to reach it with his best when he suddenly feels a pang of pain in his chest. The old man struggles to stand up as the pain increases and soon falls to the cold floor, dead of a heart attack. The scene then changes to a war veteran, Nick, who arrives at a storage room auction supervised by Eddie. He is selling the same storage room the old man died, lot 36. The bidding war begins, and Nick buys the lot for $400. However, in Eddie's office, it is revealed that he owes $12,000 to a loan shark man named Tommy, who threatens to make his life a living hell if he doesn't pay on time. Nick ends the call as Eddie enters the office and asks for the contract and key of the lot. Just before he takes the key, Eddie shows him footage of the old man hopping before and after entering the storage unit with the same bag and dropping something yet to be revealed daily for decades. Eddie believes something must be inside, but Nick couldn't care less as he only cares about the valuable stuff that is worth money in that unit. Nick goes outside to get stuff from his truck after getting the keys while a woman in her 50s named Amelia enters Eddie's office. She happily informs him that she has come to pay her 2 months overdue bills. This needs to be clarified for Eddie, as they sent an eviction notice after she left, and there was no contact from her for 2 months. So they auctioned the lot and sold it to Nick as well. Amelia explains that she moved and changed numbers after returning to her country, so he must have sent it to the older address. She called to let him know, but Eddie didn't recognize her voice and sold the lot unknowingly. Realizing his mistake, Eddie instructs Amelia to ask Nick if she can get her stuff back. So Amelia talks to Nick outside and asks if she can get her stuff back, especially the photographs of her family and grandchildren. However, Nick couldn't care less as he has already sold some, and the remaining things in that unit are legally his. Amelia pleads with him, but Nick is dismissive and would only give her access if she pays him $1,000. When she refuses, Nick mocks her by giving back the padlock from her unit, indicating that it will only be the thing she can get back from the lot. Amelia wishes for him to rot in hell in Spanish, pissing Nick off as he dislikes immigrants and the fact that this one insults him in another language. So he tells her to at least try to speak and humiliate him in his language, which she does, saying the insult in English. After that, he returns inside, getting into a heated argument with Eddie, who tells him to let Amelia get her stuff back. However, Nick is done being the good guy as he has already lost a lot, including his wife, serving the country and its people, and it's time for him to be selfish. Eddie rebuts that he is not the only one that is sacrificed because the front lines of the war are black and brown people. Eddie implies that Nick must stop hating immigrants and start caring for something or someone besides money. However, Nick will not succumb to the guilt trip and storms back into his newly bought unit, which he only then realizes smaller than other storage rooms. Shortly after, Nick starts sifting through his newly bought unit, hoping to find money worth stuff to sell to pay off his debt. To his luck, he finds a war photo album, a gold candelabra, antique chairs, a wall display, and a circular pentagram table. Nick bundles this stuff in the back of his truck when one of Tommy's men suddenly attacks him and destroys the windows of his vehicle if he doesn't pay what he owes tomorrow. Following that incident, Nick goes into Eddie's office to treat his head wound before he gets the items he found in the unit appraised. Hearing this, Eddie suggests he goes to a woman named Agatha, who is an expert on antique and gold items. Nick goes to the address and meets Agatha, who tells him that the gold candelabra doesn't worth much, but the pentagram table that turns out to be a seance table is worth much more. Agatha touches the table and pushes something, revealing a hidden compartment. It reveals 3 Latin books of questionable origin, but they are not in the scope of Agatha's expertise. The wall display with human hair pinned to it catches Agatha's attention. Before buying the stuff, Agatha contacts her associate and informs him to come quickly as she has a client that has interesting items. Shortly after, a German man named Roland arrives, with expertise in ancient books. Roland informs him that the seance table is arranged in a certain way to summon an entity. Roland adds that the 3 books are scarce, costing over $10,000 if sold at an auction. However, its 4th volume will cost the books over $300,000 because of its rarity and content. It is filled with spells and symbols to bind a demonic entity to make it earthen that burns down entirely after the demonic entity becomes earthbound. However, Nick only cares about the money and insists that the deal must be done that night, so he decides to take Roland to the storage unit to look for the 4th volume of the book. While on the way, Roland confesses that he knows the previous owner of Lot 36, a Wolmar family from Austria who has made their fortune through steel and making tanks for the German army in World War II, explaining the war photo album. After the war, the family migrated and settled in the USA, where Mr. Wolmar gambled his fortune away and disgraced his family. Nothing was ever enough for him. On top of that, he resorted to occult circles in Berlin and Vienna and invoked an entity. Mr. Wolmar's madness led him to offer his sister, Dottie, to be the vessel to occupy for the demonic entity. Dottie was possessed by this demonic entity, but in the eyes of the public, she disappeared mysteriously and was never found. It was quite the talk as the Wolmar family is a socialite. Upon arrival at the lot, Roland and Nick immediately look for the 4th volume of the book. Nick takes some useless stuff to the garbage bin outside, unaware that Amelia is hiding in the pillar, watching him. Upon his return, Nick helps Roland find the book when they accidentally discover a hollow part of the wall, revealing a dark tunnel with a very awful smell. Only then does Nick realize that the unit is smaller than the other storage rooms because it has a hidden tunnel. Roland puts candles on the gold candelabra and advises Nick to not do anything impulsive and be cautious as possible if they ever find something unnatural down the threshold. However, Nick doesn't believe in that and follows Roland as he leads the way. They see crosses and ripped-up pages from the Bible pasted on the walls. But that's not the most surprising and terrifying part. The tunnel leads to the remains of Dottie, whose body is trapped within a summoning circle with her head fused to the floor as the demonic entity has taken her face as a way in. This confirms that the old man from the first scene is Mr. Wolmar, who offered his sister to a demonic entity. However, the 4th book on the other side of the tunnel catches Nick's attention instead. Ignoring Roland's pleas to be cautious, Nick goes for the book, disturbing the summoning circle and awakening the demonic entity within. The demonic entity living in Dottie's body eats up Roland, causing the 4th book to ignite, signifying that the demonic entity has become earthbound. Realizing his mistake, Nick attempts to escape the facility, but the demonic entity chases him. He reaches the only exit, only to realize that it is locked. To his surprise, Amelia appears on the other side of the door and pleads with her to open it as he is in danger. However, Amelia shows him the padlock he gave earlier before locking the door in his face as revenge for his rudeness. Amelia leaves him trapped in that facility due to his nonsensical hatred of immigrants. The fear heightens as he hears the demonic entity snarling, indicating that it is near, so he attempts to escape again. However, the demonic entity catches him, and Nick can only scream as it eats him. Ultimately, Nick's ignorance, greed, and intolerance led him to be eaten up by a demonic entity that had been locked up for years. If he had helped Amelia earlier, he would have escaped, and if he had listened to Roland, he would have $300,000 in his pocket. The first episode ends with previews of the following stories of the Cabinet of Curiosities.